I did have in the last week a suggestion for a talk which I'm going to accept. Often if it's a suggestion which I've never talked about directly before, I'm very happy to talk about it. If it's a suggestion of a topic which I've done many times, I usually want to defer it, because all those talks are available on the internet. There's over 1,000 of my talks available, so just about every subject you can ever imagine, even weird ones. There's one talk I gave on Buddhism and bananas, one on Buddhism and coffins, so sometimes you do struggle to find a new subject. But the one this evening, I'm not sure if I've ever talked about hypocrisy, which is a problem which we often face. The person who wrote a letter said that especially hypocrisy at work, but I think that we should extend that to hypocrisy in all parts of society, especially hypocrisy in religion, hypocrisy, in our home, our family, hypocrisy with our friends and with our leaders. And whenever we come across hypocrisy, it takes away our trust in our leaders. They lose their authority to guide us, or importantly in religion, to inspire us. When we find out that what they say that other people should do, they don't do themselves, it brings everybody down to sort of a very base level. And it's one thing to be able to give talks, it's one thing to be able to give even inspiring lectures or write books, but what does that mean if the person who's writing that book or giving those instructions or giving that inspiration is not practicing just what they preach, if we don't live what we're doing? Or as they say, we don't walk the talk. It reminds me of one of my first anecdotes. I was visiting Singapore, giving some talks, and I was free one morning, because usually the talk's in the afternoon or evening, and I did hear that one of my friends, he was a monk who was running the Buddhist library in Singapore. He was trying to raise funds for his temple and was doing a charity walk. And I thought, I'm free, why don't I support other people's temples as well? So I went up there, but I surprised him. I said, I've come to do a charity walk as well. And so that, because I was well known in Singapore, you went on the little VIP table where there was a minister in the Singapore government. He was also about to give a talk, to encourage this charity event of walking to raise funds for this temple. And at that point I asked the minister, I said, are you walking on this charity walk as well? He said, no. I'm just supporting it by giving the talk. So I said, you are talking the walk. You should be walking the talk. And many ministers do that. They talk the walk. They never walk the talk. So at least I gave a speech and I did both. So that's fair enough. But you can see that when people do that, they encourage other people, but they can't find the time, or they find excuses not to do it for themselves. Then that just takes away the inspiration, it takes away the energy of the heart. And we thought, what's the point? Am I just being stupid and giving myself for others and doing all this stuff? And I've been taken advantage of. Are there really people who what they say is how they live? And I must be open with you, and as a Buddhist monk in this tradition, there are some monks, some nuns, who actually are sort of hypocrites. They ask other people to do things, they don't do it for themselves. But, we are very open in our monasteries, and many of you have been to see the places where we live, in Dharmasara Monastery or Bodhinyana Monastery, and you do go into my rooms, and you do see where I live. Sometimes, I live in a cave in Bodhinyana Monastery. Sometimes this is where I live, my house. Sometimes I have to knock on the door to make sure that no one's in there, because a lot of people go want to visit it and take photos inside it. It's a tourist place now, but this is my bedroom. I remember this, he's not here today. One day was one of these big events. I think our Katina ceremony, I've been talking to people and working and organising things and answering questions and doing all these ceremonies. And about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was finally finished. I'm just going to go in my cave to have a meditate. And as soon as I went in there, someone else was already meditating in there. Come on, get out. This is my cave. But at least, it's open so you can actually see, how your monks and your nuns actually live. And we do live simply. And this is an important part for me, because when you see other people saying one thing and doing another, being hypocrites, that took away a lot of my faith, in religion and in politics or any other people who had authority. How can you have faith sort of in a policeman who breaks the law? Now, how can you have faith sort of in a weather forecaster who always takes an umbrella to work just in case? How can you have faith in a banker who keeps all his money under the mattress? You can't have faith in such people because they don't practice what they preach. This is one of the problems here. Talking about the weather forecaster, I don't know if you heard this story. There was a monastery over in the north of India, and it was getting close to their winter time, and they just elected a new abbot, a new head monk. And one of the things which the junior monks asked was just a practical question. Is it going to be a cold winter? Because up in the mountains in the north of India, it snows and it can be totally freezing and a danger to your health. So the monks asked the abbot, is it going to be a cold winter? Should we collect more firewood? And this was like a monk who's, sometimes you ask too much of your monks and nuns as if they got supernatural powers all the time, even though they just ordained last week. You expect them to know everything about Nibbana, and enlightenment and everything else. But this was a monk who was a little bit proud. He didn't want to sort of show that he didn't really know what he was talking about, and so he just said, I think this year will be a cold winter. You'd better collect a lot of firewood. So all the monks went out to collect lots of firewood for the winter. And after 2 or 3 days, the monks were working so hard collecting firewood. He thought, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe just to be sure, I'll ring up the weather bureau. So he called up the weather bureau anonymously, so they didn't know who was asking. They said, can I speak to the head, who was actually a professor of meteorology? And he said, this year, what is the forecast? Is it going to be cold? And this professor of meteorology said, according to the signs, it's going to be a very cold winter this year. Great, he said, thank you. So the next morning he told all the monks, get more firewood. The signs are, I see it, it's going to be really, really cold. So the monks, they just were collecting firewood all day and late into the evening. And after a few more days, he thought, well, maybe that professor made a mistake, I should check up. So he rang the professor again not saying who he was, and say, look, how are the signs now? Is it going to be a very, very cold winter? And the professor said, look, it's got worse. The signs are it's going to be incredibly cold, one of the coldest winters we've ever had. Thank you. So the next morning, look, monks, we have to even collect wood late into the night and get up early in the morning. It's going to be one of the coldest winters ever. I'm sure of that. So they collected so much wood, and they wondered whether they should collect any more. So he asked he phoned up the professor one more time. He said, are you really sure, absolutely sure? He said, yes, the signs have got worse since you last called. It's going to be an incredibly cold winter. And the monk, anonymous, said, how do you know? Well, said the professor, the monks in the monastery are collecting firewood like mad. That's why it's going to be a very cold winter. When I read that, they said that explains Wall Street. And the economy. Just all following each other, just like blind leading the blind. But that's like hypocrites. We tell other people what to do. We don't know what we're doing ourselves. At least when I don't know what I'm saying, I actually admit it. I say I don't know what I'm talking about, but people listen anyway, which is really amazing. Some of the things last week I was at on Wednesday night, environmental forum, but it's religion and environment. And I think Hugh was there. I did pretty well, even though I don't know too much about what I'm talking about. Because you're good at some areas, not at other areas. And I admit that, okay, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. So, what I know, I say. And what I don't know, I say you don't know. Isn't that wonderful when sometimes people ask you questions, I just don't know, that's not my area. I'm not sort of skilled at that. Things like meditation or the way the mind works, yeah, I'm skilled at that, but not these other things. But at least, when I ask people to do something, I made a vow a long time ago never to ask a person to do something I wouldn't do myself. And that's a really important thing. So even I confess, I know people get angry at me when I say these things, but I confess that just last Friday, not today, but a week ago, yes, I'm 61 and a half years old now, and I was pushing wheelbarrows full of concrete up the ramps in the monastery. Yes, was it Tuesday or Wednesday, I was up on the roof fixing the roof sheets at Jhana Grove. And people kept saying, Ajahn Brahm, you shouldn't get up on the roof. What happens if you fall off? I said, well, I'll die. We've got to die sometimes. I ask other people to get on the roof. Why can't I get up there myself? But Ajahn Brahm, look at your weight. The roof might cave in. No, they never said that. But it's one thing never to ask other people not to do what you wouldn't do yourself. Otherwise, you are a hypocrite. So if you ask someone to take out the garbage, are you willing to take out the garbage yourself? And that's important as a leader, to actually be willing to do that, and every now and again to do that. Apparently when I was working with the other monks, just mixing the concrete, pushing the concrete up there, they never expected me to be there, but it really made a big difference for them. They said, wonderful, it's great, you're our teacher and abbot, but at least you get involved with all the work we have to do, so at least you find out what we're doing. And one of the great stories on hypocrisy, or rather the opposite of it, which I remember, was the story when it came from that life of that great man Gandhi. If ever you read his history, this whole life was dedicated to what he called satya, or truth. And it wasn't just external truth, but the truth of his own conduct and behavior. So he was an incredibly virtuous man. And on this occasion, remember this story from a long time ago, he was studying law in UK, in London, and he was staying in a boarding house, which people did in those days. And the woman who owned the boarding house, who cooked for these poor students, had a son who was eating too much sugar. And this landlady took this Mr. Gandhi aside. He wasn't known, he was just a young man studying. She didn't know this guy was going to become really world famous. But even then he had authority, so much so that she said, my son doesn't listen to me, but for some reason he looks up to you. So can you please tell my son not to eat so much sugar? I think he may listen to you. And Mr. Gandhi said, yes, ma'am, I will. Week passed, 2 weeks passed, and the landlady took Mr. Gandhi aside. So, Mr. Gandhi, do you remember that conversation we had 2 weeks ago? I asked you to tell my son not to eat so much sugar. He's still eating so much sugar. You said you would tell him. Why haven't you? And Mr. Gandhi said, I did tell your son not to have so much sugar, but only this morning. Why did you wait 2 weeks? Said the landlady. Because, said Mr. Gandhi, it took me 2 weeks to give up taking sugar. He would not tell even a kid to give up sugar if he was taking sugar himself. Now that's a sign of a person who can show leadership, who has authority, because what they say is what they do. And it's a tough thing to have that authority and that leadership in the world, because so often we expect too much from our leaders. And we expect them to be so perfect. As I was saying, even as a monk, you expect them to know everything. Even our celebrities are expected to know everything. And if you look at sort of the magazines, when they have people like Angelina Jolie, she's now supposed to be an expert on breast cancer. And she's a film actress, she's not a professor of medicine. And I remember reading that this singer, Dolly Parton, remember Dolly Parton? She says wherever she goes, people ask her questions on philosophy and the meaning of life and what they should do with their children or with their spouse. And she says, look, I'm Dolly Parton, not the Dalai Parton. Not the Dalai Lama. But at least they're being honest there, rather than trying to be someone they are not. Unfortunately, the pressure on us, especially on all of us, we are pressured so much, to be full of wisdom and full of understanding, that the tendency is for us to be hypocrites. To say what we don't know. To say what we do, which we haven't quite reached yet. And to actually to bend the truth, to please what other people want to hear. And that is one of the problems with hypocrisy. It's not just the people who are hypocrites, the people who say things which they don't do themselves. It's because we expect them to say such high things. And we expect the celebrities to be wise in all things. We expect all the monks and nuns to be perfect. We expect our politicians to never make mistakes or never be allowed to do U-turns. And to know what they say to others. The health minister never to smoke. I actually did remember seeing, because one of my weaknesses is comedy. I probably understand why. But I remember someone was telling me they had this TV program called Yes Minister, which was apparently very, very funny. And so someone showed me this 5-minute clip of Yes Minister, and it had the health minister in the British government. It's supposed to be just a fake, but the health minister came in to see this other minister, and he was puffing on a cigarette, sort of coughing his lungs out, and he was supposed to be the health minister, which was a bit crazy. But that was what we have with hypocrisy. Sometimes we expect people, to be much more than they possibly can. So one of the things with hypocrisy, please don't expect so much of other people. Lower expectations, for goodness sake. Lower expectations of your politicians. And sometimes, knowing a few politicians, Jeff Gallup was a good friend. And the pressure which you have, to be wise in all things, never to make a mistake. I remember in one election where he was standing as premier of this state, had a picture of him with his finger in his ear. The poor fellow, he just did that for 1 second, and of course, click, and that was on the posters of the opposition party. Imagine if that was you. You'd always have to, are you picking your nose? That would be on the photographs. It'd be terrible. So I'm very paranoid sometimes when people take a photograph of me. What am I doing? What's that going to look like? But we expect so much of it, and this gives us so much pressure. And the pressure is we say things which we can't do. We make promises which can never be reached. And we make comments which give them certainty when really we don't know. And sometimes we get hypocrisy because we demand it, we cause it. So for goodness sake, lower your expectations of other people so they don't promise what you want to hear, but which they can't deliver. And this little bit of compassion, this little bit of understanding the nature of human beings in this world, they are not perfect. I remember this when I was used to watch soccer as a young man. Sometimes you watch these professional soccer players and they kick a ball and they'd miss. Are you stupid? Even my grandmother could sort of kick a ball straighter than you. When you actually standing watching, it looks so easy. But if you get there on the pitch, you try and kick the ball yourself, you could kick even wider than the sort of professionals. We are so critical. We demand so much. We expect such high achievements. And that's why we find people are hypocrites. And why they just cannot be honest. And why a pope can't just say, look, I made mistakes. I'm not infallible. I do make mistakes, okay? It just happens. It reminds me of the old story of the Pope. Here comes the Pope joke. If you're Catholic and want to close your ears, please do so now. I remember this because it's one of the great Pope jokes. The Pope, he was visiting sort of Australia, got picked up at the airport in a big limousine, sitting in the back with the driver, and halfway down the road, there was a way to go to the destination. Pope said to his driver, hey, are you a Catholic? He said, yes, I'm a Catholic. So do you want to get absolution from a few sins? He said, yeah, sure. Let me drive the car. He said, it's so hard for a Pope to drive the car. I've never done that for years. Please, let me drive. And the driver said, I can't do that. He said, look, I'll absolve you from everything. Deal. So they changed seats. The chauffeur in the back, the Pope driving. And of course the Pope, never driven for quite a few years, puts his foot down, starts speeding, and of course gets caught by policemen. Policeman in his motorbike comes next to the window. Pull over, sir. And he pulls over. Lower the window. And when he lowers the window, what does the policeman see? The Pope! So he gets straight onto his radio and calls the station. Hey, Sarge, I'm in big trouble. What do you mean big trouble? I just pulled over this VIP. And the Sarge at the station says, look, don't worry about VIPs. This is Australia. It's fair go for everybody. I don't care who they are, book them. But this is a real VIP. I don't care, said the Sarge. This is equal society. Everyone is equal in front of the law. Book them. But look, this is a really VIP. And the Sarge said, who is it? He said, I don't really know, but the Pope is the chauffeur. It's an old joke, but it's a good one. But give the Pope a break. So remember, what we promise to do for others, make it reasonable, what we can actually achieve. And then we aren't hypocrites. You don't have to be so perfect in this world. You don't have to be so great. So be honest instead. And that honesty makes you human. And that humanness makes you lovable. That makes you part of things rather than being something so special. And this is a problem with hypocrisy. We try and be special. We try and be something we can't be. And we promise and say things which we can never achieve. And of course, we criticize others for doing that. But of course, the people who criticize others for hypocrisy are probably hypocrites themselves. And actually just, criticizing somebody else, you hypocrite. You're a hypocrite for saying that, unless you've never been a hypocrite yourself. It's one of the things we're trained as Buddhist monks in our discipline. Before we speak and we criticize anybody else, we're supposed to contemplate many things. And one of the things we're supposed to contemplate, the thing I'm criticizing that person for, do I do it myself? That's one of the first reflections. Or do I do worse things or similar things? And if you criticize somebody else for doing something you're already doing yourself, that is called hypocrisy. And Buddha said, don't do that, stop. Now clean up your own act first of all before you go criticizing others. Otherwise, your words have no effect at all. They're just wasted speech. People won't listen to you. It doesn't have any effect. What are you doing that for? And that's so important with your children. For those of you who keep coming here and say, my children are doing this and doing that, they're really bad kids. Why are they bad kids? Actually, just on a side issue, that's what I mentioned at the environmental talk with, what was it called? The It was World Environmental Day last Wednesday, apparently, UN World Environment Day. So they had the Anglican Commission on the environment, had this interfaith meeting. There's, the rabbi, the Buddhist monk, the Muslim and the Christians, what I call the usual suspects. I always meet the same people when we have these interfaith ones. So we know each other really, really well. So on that, at least I did say one thing which I know about on the environment, which I'm not a hypocrite on. One of the biggest problems causing climate change, environmental degradation, the lack of water, the lack of fuel and stuff, is overpopulation. Many people criticize overpopulation, but they're hypocrites. They just have lots and lots of kids. And I said, at least as a Buddhist monk for over 40 years, I am doing my bit to solve the problem of overpopulation. So I can actually say that without being a hypocrite. But so many people, they say these things without doing anything themselves. And if you do that to your kids, how are you actually bringing up your children? It's not what you say, it's what you do. That's what they listen to, and that's what they remember more than anything else. So, what I learned from my parents is what I saw and how they behaved. I often say one of the things I always remember was how truthful they were in front of me, and my brother as well. They did argue, and they never hid their arguments, when they shouted at each other. But what was most important was they never hid when they made up afterwards. So they would shout at each other and get angry at each other and just, go into other rooms or something. They'd always come out again after 10 minutes and then make up, give a hug and forgive each other. And that is what I learned. It wasn't hidden. In a marriage, in any sort of relationship, of course you'll have arguments. Sometimes you think of killing the other person, but you can be a hypocrite there. Just because you say it, please don't do it. That is hypocrisy, which is okay. Don't do it for goodness sake. But, you have these big arguments, and then you come together afterwards, and you forgive each other. And that was such an important lesson I learnt, from just examples, not teachings, not words. And what I learned there, it's natural to have arguments. It's okay to get really upset at the person you love. I mean, really upset, shouting at them. But it didn't last. And you found out the way to reconcile afterwards. And I saw that so many times. What I learned, it's okay to argue, and arguments, they don't sort of break up the relationship. They're always followed by this beautiful reconciliation, the hug, sorry, kiss, okay, let's sort of let that go. And seeing that so many times was much greater teaching than any talking. So this is where hypocrisy is where, you say one thing, but you don't actually see things. The teachings which you see, by actions are much, much more important. Just like this other little story I told last week. The monks went to a massage parlour on Monday. It was a Thai massage, the real massage, not the dodgy massage parlours. There's a very nice Thai lady who was celebrating the success of her little business over in Lake Street in sort of North Perth or Northbridge, whatever it was. But anyway, there were some kids there because it was it not Australia Day? That's right, West Australia Day, WA Day, whatever it was. So they were on holiday. So I told them this story because kids, it's a waste of time teaching unless it's something which really means something. And this was one of the talks about hypocrisy and how some people, they say one thing but they don't deliver. And that really, really gives us a lot of problem. That was the story, one of my lovely stories, of how a mousetrap killed a chicken, a pig and a cow. And I started off with these little kids. Can a mousetrap kill a cow? Of course it can't. I said, yes, it can. And this is how it happened. In a farmhouse somewhere in Australia, there were 5 mice who befriended the chicken, the pig, and the cow. And the 5 mice were very helpful, to those 3 animals, because they actually lived in the house. And they heard everything the farmer and his wife were discussing. So if they ever heard the farmer say to his wife, "Darling, I really would like some roast chicken tonight," the mice, having heard that, would go to the chicken and warn it. "Chicken, they're looking for you. Lay low, hide. They want roast chicken today." And that way the chicken was always safe. Whenever they heard the wife say, "Oh, I really fancy some pork sausages tonight," they would go and tell the pig, "Hey, hide, lay low, they want pork today." Or whenever they wanted a steak, "Hey, cow, hide in the forest. They're looking for you." And that way, they always saved their 3 friends, the animals. And the animals, because they were mice and there were 5 of them, and they were very intelligent, they called them Mouse Intelligent 5, MI5. And everything was going well because they're supposed to be friends and looking after each other. But what happened one day, one of the mice was looking through a crack in the wall, and they saw the farmer's wife open up a package from the post. Only a small package. But when she opened it and the mouse saw what was inside, the mouse almost screamed and fainted, because it was a mouse trap. "Oh my God, she's got a mouse trap. They're trying to kill us. It's only a matter of time." Because the mice knew, they were very intelligent, that mouse trap will be set in the middle of the night when it's dark. And mice doing what mice do, run this way, run that way. It's only probability, a matter of time. One of the mice will be running somewhere and get caught in that mouse trap. So all the mice, they came together. What should we do? What should we do? How can we escape with our lives? And so they thought, let's ask our friends. So first of all, they went to Mrs. Chicken. "Mrs. Chicken, you always promised, to repay us for our kindness. Now we really need your help. Farmer's wife has got a mouse trap. She's going to kill us. What should we do?" You know what the chicken said? It said, "None of my business. Look after yourself. Mouse trap can't kill a chicken." This is what hypocrites are like. They promise you everything. When you really need it, they're not there for you. So they went to the pig. "Pig, help us. We're so scared. Farmer's wife has got mousetrap. We're dead. We're toast." And the pig said, "None of my business. Look after yourselves. Mousetrap can't kill a pig." So then they went to the cow. "Cow, please help us. We're going to be killed. We're finished. We're dead." "Moo," said the cow. "None of my business. Look after yourself." And that's the problem with some people. They promise you everything. They're hypocrites. They really let you down. And that was just so disappointing for those mice. Not just disappointing, it was bad karma for those animals, because look what happened next. A couple of nights later, one of the mice was scattering around the floor and trod in the mouse trap. That hurt. I need to do that for special effects. The mouse trap broke that poor mouse's neck. And all the other mice, they heard the sound. And they all came to look, and they saw their friend was killed. Would instantly go to mouse heaven. Do mice go to heaven? Well, why not if they're good mice? At least but they won't go to the same heaven as the cats go to. Otherwise there could be a lot of trouble. But anyway. So the 4 mice looked at their friend. Now what would it be like for you if you saw your best friend or your brother or your sister just killed in a road accident? You'd be shocked and so tragically sad. And that's what happened to these mice. They started crying. They put in their little arms around each other to console each other. Crying and weeping, they lost their best friend. And of course, the farmer's wife heard the sound of the mousetrap going off. She came down to investigate with her flashlight. And what do you think she saw? 4 mice crying, holding each other with their arms. Have you ever seen that before? No, she'd never seen that before, so she fainted. And after she fainted, she hit her head. And she was just so concussed, the farmer put her into bed and called the doctor. And the doctor said, "Oh, she'll get over it." But the farmer said, "Well, my wife is very sick. What's good for people who are sick?" And he thought, "Yeah, you got it, chicken soup." So the mice weren't very helpful now. They were just so taken up with grief, they didn't know what was going on. And so the farmer got the chicken, cut its head off, and put it in a pot with some garlic, some onions, potatoes and carrots to make chicken soup for his wife. So that was how the mousetrap killed the chicken. And once the friends heard that the farmer's wife was sick, they all came to visit. And of course, when you have visitors, you've got to be hospitable to them. You can't just give them a glass of water. He needed to give them some sandwiches. So you know what sandwiches he gave them? Pork sandwiches. And that's how he went to find a pig and killed a pig too to make sandwiches for the people visiting to look after the sick wife. But no matter how many pork sandwiches and how many chicken soup they gave the poor farmer's wife, she died. And of course at the funeral ceremony, he needed to feed the guests and relations. Roast beef. and that's how the cow met its end. So that is how a mousetrap killed a chicken, a pig and a cow. If only that chicken, pig and cow had not been hypocrites and kept their promise to look after their friends, they would still be alive. So never ever think, it's not my problem, none of my business, these things can't affect me. Bodhinyana Monastery, we live high up on a hill, so climate change and the rise of the sea levels won't affect us. In fact, we'll be a beach monastery when the sea rises. We'll be like resort. But no, you don't think, oh, it won't affect me. Yes, it does. The MC on Wednesday night was Frank Sheehan. He's the chaplain at Christchurch Grammar School, a good friend, and he was actually saying, before this climate change business, I'm old, by the time it happens I'll be dead. I said, yes, but you'll get reincarnated, okay? He said, oh no. So it does affect everybody, so don't just think, it's none of my business, it's not my problem. It is. This is just the way our whole world is interconnected. So whatever is happening to another person happens to you too. So the hypocrisy goes to another level. This is where we get compassion for. Even for things which don't affect me. This is not going to hurt me. Who knows, maybe it will. So if someone asks for your help, if you possibly can, please help them. Otherwise you will end up like the chicken in a pot of soup. You fed to someone. So the whole point with hypocrisy is, again, that sometimes, number one, just don't promise what you can't deliver. And number two, don't try and be something you can never be. If you don't know, say you don't know. And always, if you're going to make a promise, try and keep it. And so if you're going to speak to anyone or give anyone advice, please make sure that you can give from authority. That if you tell another person to give up smoking cigarettes, you've given up smoking cigarettes yourself. If you're teaching another person to keep 5 precepts, it's not killing, not stealing, not committing adultery, not lying, not taking alcohol or drugs, please make sure you're doing that as well. Otherwise, what authority have you got? If you're teaching another person to live a simple life, you've got to do that as well. I was giving this conference I think it was in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, this big Buddhist conference. And this monk, he was a Tibetan monk, a Western Tibetan monk, and he was saying about the importance of living simply, in our world, and not using too much stuff, and so we can limited resources of this planet can go a bit further. And at question time, this guy came up and went to the microphone and said, "Is it okay for monks to wear Rolex watches?" And his hand went under the table very quickly. He had a Rolex on. Now that's hypocrisy. Is it right for someone who lives on charity to have a Rolex watch, have gold chains and stuff like that? Does that sound right to you? Of course it's not right. I must admit, a long time ago, because hypocrisy was something which turned me off many religions and many other places, I made a vow that I will never sleep in any sort of my home in a monastery which is more luxurious than the poorest of my supporters. That's why I live in a cave. The people who come and feed the monks and the nuns every day. How do you live? What's your house like? And if your house is smaller or more poor than my house, I should be coming to you and giving you alms food every day, not the other way around. Otherwise I'm a hypocrite. So I really try hard to live up to that rule, personally. So you can see my little cave, and that's where I live. So you look after me, you feed me. You feed me too much. This here is not my fault, it's your fault. Whatever. But at least I can actually sleep and live in a simple place. Comfortable, healthy, but at least not more luxurious than you. Otherwise I would feel a terrible, terrible hypocrite. And I couldn't live with that. Sometimes, if you follow a spiritual path, and if what you say to others is not how you practice yourself, there's that disconnection there, and you just can't live with yourself. There's a terrible stress inside your mind, inner dishonesty. And if there's anything which is fundamental to a spiritual path, is that inner honesty. You are true to yourself. How you are, that's how you speak, and how you behave. There's not sort of this two people inside of you. Your public figure and your personal private identity. It has to be, as Dennis used to say, congruent. And if you haven't got that congruency, there's a terrible stress and tension inside of you. You can never find any peace. It's important just to be who you are. If you're not perfect, say so. There's many things which I do. It's not perfect. I don't hide anything. I tell stupid jokes, and I tell them many, many times. You've probably heard many of those stories before, but I don't care. Usually I like teaching people who are old, because they forget the story I told last week. I told this terrible joke. I told it to Dennis on the way in. It's a bit sick, but here it goes. It's just... apparently, I was with Ajahn Sujato. His mother and sister were visiting our monastery. And they were saying that sometimes they heard the story before, and I said yes, but I just that morning the Cancer Support Association had been to visit our monastery. They usually come every year. They're coming again, I think just in June or July, I think. But anyway, I said I really like talking to the Cancer Support Association and telling my stories and jokes because there's a high turnover. We don't hear the ones last year, not usually the ones that come this year. And they thought that was sick. Oh, come on, have a sense of humour. Okay, so that's me, okay. I can't avoid a joke. So I agree, that's my sort of weaknesses, but I'm honest with them. And you feel so much at ease when you don't have to hide anything, you don't have to pretend, when you're not a hypocrite. It's part of the spiritual life. And in all of those great monks and nuns which I knew in my youth, they were all honest to themselves. Ajahn Chah was just so honest. He never hid anything, never ashamed of anything. He used to have betel nut and this terrible red stuff coming out of his mouth all the time because that's what he was brought up with. That's just how he was. And all these other monks with their little idiosyncrasies. There was one of these monks, This is just some anecdotes now. His name was Ajahn Singtong. He was just crazy. He was actually a brilliant monk. But I'm now going to imitate. The monks know this story. I don't think I've told you that here. When he gave the blessing, the first time, I'm going to imitate how he gave the blessing. You may have heard this blessing at Bodhinyana Monastery, but not the way this Ajahn Singtong would do it. He'd go, Yata wariwaha pura paripurenti sagarang ewa mewa ito danang petadang upakapati ichitang patitang tobang keep up mewa sabit. And I'm not exaggerating, that's how we would do it. And as a monk, you would try not to fall about laughing, but when all of the other lay people, they just enjoyed it because he was eccentric. And it was wonderful to see. And he was reputed one of Ajahn Mun's great disciples, totally enlightened. And you can understand it, but he was eccentric with it. He wasn't hiding. And it was so reassuring to see you can be eccentric and enlightened at the same time. He would do this. This is Ajahn Singtong stories. He had this... He had this monk come from Bangkok, this really refined monk, all his titles and stuff sit next to him. And, they had a fish, with their rice. And so, the monk from Bangkok very carefully took off the fish's head, and as you put it in the spittoon, the receptacle, and started eating the fish. When Ajahn Singtong saw this, he looked at him, and right in front of this monk, he had his fish. He broke off the head and he put the body in the spittoon and ate the head. Just out of spite. That's all. They're totally eccentric, some of these monks. But that's who they were. And it was so refreshing to have that honesty. Okay, this is who they were. They played around. Isn't that beautiful that there's no inner hypocrisy? There's one thing about being a hypocrite to others, which is not very nice to see. But are you a hypocrite to yourself? How you regard yourself. Is that how you really are? What you talk to yourself about. Is that really sort of honest and accurate? And isn't it refreshing not to be a hypocrite of yourself, to be totally honest to who you are and how you are? You don't have to be great. You can be eccentric. You can be have a few faults. And as I keep on saying this, about the 4th week in a row I've said this, the trees in the forest which are beautiful are the crooked ones, the bent ones, the scarred ones. You don't have to be a perfect tree to be totally lovable. All the trees are damaged goods. I'm damaged goods, you're damaged goods. That's why you're welcome here. I don't want any perfect goods in this temple, only damaged goods. We should put a sign in there. Damaged goods only in this Buddhist center. You're beautiful. It's just being honest to who you are. The damaged trees are always the most beautiful in the forest. The crooked ones all over the place. Perfect trees, they're just plantation trees. They're not real. Those are the sorts of things when you're a hypocrite to yourself, you're not admitting who you are. You're dishonest. And that's one of the great sayings of the Buddha. He said, if you're dishonest in this spiritual life, it's like he got this jar of water, he turned it upside down. You're just empty. There's nothing there for you. Unless you're honest and truthful to who you are. So please, we can criticize hypocrisy in others. People who say one thing and do the other. What about you? To yourself. Okay, it's hard to change what you do. Some of them are habits, but at least you can change what you say to bring your words in line with your actions. Be honest with yourself. And then you find this wonderful realization, which I got from Buddhism a long time ago. It's all right to make mistakes. You don't have to be perfect. Oh, what a relief. A woman, you don't have to be as beautiful as Angelina Jolie or whatever. As a man, you don't have to be as big as Arnie Schwarzenegger, who's coming to Perth next week, I just heard. You can just be you. And be honest with whom you are. Don't be a hypocrite of your own nature. Be true to yourself and who you are. And also the next thing you can do is don't be a hypocrite to life. That's one of the things I heard in this environmental conference. how beautiful nature is. This is like, people who believe in a God. God created nature, so nature must be perfect. These are people who live in the city. I live in the forest, amidst all the ticks. You get a few ticks on you and think, who created this? The nature is very harsh. That's why most people don't live in the forest. They live in the city, okay? There's a reason for that. Nature is very harsh and can be very cruel. The bushfires, the tsunamis, the earthquakes, the floods, the cold. And there's a lot of dangers out in nature. So at least be honest what nature really is. It's a very cruel, harsh environment in many times. All the nice, comfortable places have already been taken over by the golf courses and the resorts. What's left to the people who want to have a little place in the bush is usually just the very harsh places. But once you accept what they are and are honest to it, it has its own beauty. Not the beauty people expect. It's the harshness is actually coming a bit home. You can feel the cold, you can feel the heat. It's a little tick bite, so what? It doesn't cause you any damage. Flies up your nose, they're only going exploring. That's just what flies do over here in Australia. It makes you become a bit more tolerant of not dissatisfaction, of discomfort. Sometimes we're so used to comfort in our world that we don't have enough tolerance of the discomfort of life. But that's what nature is. It's much more true being in the bush. I'm not saying it's beautiful, but it's true. And so this is one of the reasons why monks and nuns who live in the forest, we're not being hypocritical to life. You do see death, you do see pain, you do see extremes of heat and cold and fires and destructions. So, number one, don't be hypocritical to others. Number two, don't be hypocritical to yourself. Number three, and most important of all, don't be hypocritical to life. We do die, we do get sick, we do make mistakes. You may say that's cruel, but that's life. Be honest to life. And once you're honest to this thing we call life, accept it for what it is. Just like that forest with all its ticks and flies and bushfires, it does become beautiful. Unexpectedly so. The beauty of life as it is. Just like the beauty of you as you are. The beauty of the damaged goods. Life is damaged goods. That is why it's beautiful. That is the opposite of hypocrisy. That's called being honest. Thank you for listening. Okay, when you said sadhu, was that being hypocritical? Did you really believe in that? Okay, maybe not. Okay, so we have some questions now, and the internet is working again from overseas, so we have some questions. I don't know from where, but here we go. Oh, it's gone off. Come back. Press something wrong. Okay, can you get it back? I probably deleted everybody. I do apologise overseas if I deleted the rest of the planet. Here we go. Okay, thank you. First of all, Karina from Perth. Sometimes it is difficult to be authentic. How do I learn to be honest and be myself at all times? Don't be afraid. Especially don't be afraid what other people think of you, because you spend your whole life trying to please other people, and then you're not authentic. You're living a lie. And do you really want to live a lie? If you want to live a lie, become an actor. I was going to say politician, but I better not get involved in that. To be authentic. Wouldn't it be great if politicians say, I made a mistake, I really blew it, that was the wrong thing I decided. If any politicians, please be honest and say you made a mistake. And the opposition might blah, 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 but I think a lot of people would love you for the last being an authentic person. How do I learn to be honest and be myself at all times? Again, it's lack of fear. Fear what other people think of you. And don't let other people's opinions and comments control you. Otherwise you never feel free. You're in a prison of other people's comments and wanting to please others. And you find when you're sort of free of that, you please people much more. People respect you so much more, when it's, they know who they're dealing with. And next, reflect what it's like to deal with other people who are not authentic. You're looking for a partner in life. You don't know if they're authentic, they're just playing a game with you. Just how uncertain and confusing that can be. Wouldn't it be wonderful if everyone was totally authentic? So you knew who you were going out with. So please, all you girls, never wear makeup when you're going out. Please be authentic. Please, no breast implants. Please be authentic. Please, no false teeth. I know some people's teeth, they're like the stars. You know what that means, don't you? When your teeth are like the stars, they come out at night. I heard that over in Singapore. So to be authentic. And it's much more fun being authentic. So get over your fear. Don't worry what other people think of you. Try it out. See what happens. And if you can be in a group of other people who are authentic, in other words, a group of people who are spiritual, at least they're supposed to be sort of authentic people, or supposed to be religious, supposed to be who they are, then go out with a few people like that, and then it encourages you to be who you are. And you find you're a much better person than you ever thought you would be. Next one, Naiwa from Indonesia. I'm in a Buddhist community which does not put too much emphasis on meditation, but on rituals and prayers. I've been trying to practice meditation on my own. What should I do? Please carry on practicing meditation. The traditional Buddhists in places like Indonesia, there's so many rituals and prayers, and that's just the outer surface, not getting to the heart of things. I still remember Professor David Blair at our University of Western Australia, the head of physics over there. It's amazing over here, you get to know all these people over here. My tentacles have gone all over around Perth. And he told me once that when he was young, he went to Thailand. He was interested in Buddhism. He's our local professor of physics. And he said, but he could never find anyone to talk to ask his questions. They're all just into rituals and ceremonies. And I concocted this phrase that in many countries, that you can't see the Buddha for the incense smoke. It's a nice little image there. So much incense, so many rituals, you can't see what's underneath it all. And actually, so he left Thailand and just, gave up any interest in Buddhism. He just saw the rituals, which was, he said, is a great shame. Please never do that again. So please, all the people from other lands, whether it's from Sri Lanka, whether it's from Singapore, Malaysia, Taiwan, Hong Kong, China, whatever, please be careful not to cover up these incredible, wonderful teachings with all the rituals and bowing and chanting and smoke and stuff like that. So the meditation and the rituals and the prayers, they are not the most important part of Buddhism. The Buddha never did any of those rituals. The Buddha never did chanting. He would actually teach the Dharma. Now those teachings have become our chants. So remember, the Buddha never did this. It's not original part of Buddhism. It's not authentic Buddhism. It's just this cultural overlay which keeps going on and on and on afterwards. So please, can we go back to the authentic, the heart of Buddhism, which is meditation, which is, your virtuous practice. It's the cultivation of things like not being a hypocrite, being authentic. That is, the essence of this. So, how to do? What should I do? You should come to Yogyakarta tomorrow because I'll be there. But Indonesia is a big place. Get on the internet. This is a great thing. We don't even need temples anymore. Brilliant. We have internet. So most people listening to this talk this evening are listening online. There's many more people are listening right now on the internet. Hi, everybody. That are actually in this hall over here. That's brilliant, which means that people can listen to it in their bedroom, they can listen to it in their car, going to work, whatever they're doing, which means the rituals and prayers. How can you do rituals and prayers in your sort of bedroom or in your car going to work? Unless you're in the sort of traffic and you're praying, please let me get to work on time. But other than that, it's the practice is more important. So we can actually get back to real important teachings of the Buddha by taking away all the incense smoke which has obscured the Buddha. Last question, Helen from the United States. When my family argues, it is always about the same thing, and there is little listening. Oh, great, it's tradition. Always about the same thing. Okay, maybe it's not. There is little listening. The worst is when the other person doesn't let it go and keeps trying to pull me into the same argument. What is the best approach to relating to this person? Okay, I've heard similar questions before. They're always arguing over the same thing, because when they're in that argument, they're totally obsessed by being right and into that argument. They can't really see what they're doing. In Buddhism, we say they haven't got any mindfulness or self-awareness. So how can we get that self-awareness into people, when they're arguing, they're really upset? And the answer is you can't then, because being angry is you're being mad, you're crazy. We call it temporary insanity. But there is a skillful means, thankfully, thanks to modern technology. When your parents or family argues, please get out your iPhone and video them. Video them. When they're calmed down, then play it back to them. Because when they're calmed down, then they have mindfulness, then they're aware, they're not so obsessed with being right or wrong. Because they're calmed down and they're reasonable again. Then play it back to them, and then they'll see what they act like when they're arguing. That's just a way of getting this mindfulness business working. They can actually see it. And if you see how you behave in an argument, an hour later when you settle down, it is embarrassing. And if that doesn't work, then post the video on YouTube. That'll embarrass the hell out of them. And so it's very good. Sometimes if they're that stubborn, they need something really hard to actually to stop them arguing. Would they be embarrassed? Would you be embarrassed if you had an argument and everyone else saw it? Of course you'd be embarrassed. And so you should be, because is this me doing this? You totally lose your self-respect if you see yourself arguing like that. So it's a skillful means. And if people are, what are you doing that for? You can say, this monk in Perth told me. So, blame me. So it's my religious right, my spiritual practice to do this, because we heard this. So, it's my religious freedom to video you, Mum and Dad, and put it on YouTube. But otherwise, because we don't realize what we're doing, that's why we don't see it's a problem. As soon as we realize what we're really doing, and I do that also for people who have smoking or any addictions like to alcohol. If you've got a person in the family who's always getting drunk or getting violent even, please video them. You can keep it private. You don't have to put it on YouTube. Keep it private. But when they're sober, or when they're settled down, they're not violent, then show it to them, how they behave. When they actually see, from the perspective of then they're calm and sober, what they're like. It's so embarrassing. It really hits them in a place where they realize it's a problem and start doing something about it. It's when we don't realize this is a problem, that's where even the first step is not taken. Once we realize, it is a problem, arguing like this is a problem, then the solutions are many. So, Helen, that's what I would do. And I'm serious, it's not a joke. Get out your iPhone, video them, show it to them later on. So this is what you're like, Mum and Dad, or whoever's arguing. Are you proud of this? Is this what you want to be like? And once they realise it's a problem, there's so many ways of overcoming these little arguments. Okay, so there we go. Any questions from the floor tonight? Yes, we have one over here. Question? From over here, the front. Over here, this way. Look, cut you blind. It's good. Very good. Okay.
Question to ask is about how there's a lot of type of crooked trees in perfection.
A lot of crooked trees, yes.
And being hypocrite is one of them.
Yes.
So it means that generally there are. So thank you.
Yeah.
There are crooked that we can keep, and there are some that not advisable to keep like being
Yeah.
hypocrite. Is there any advice that to differentiate these two types
Okay.
of?
It's what's happened in the past, you can't alter, it's there. So the damage in the past, you actually dig it in, the old story, to make delicious mangoes. It's the fertilizer, the pain, the crooked things which have happened and you've done in the past. That's part of who you are. That's what makes you beautiful. But in hypocrisy, it's not being truthful. And it's a lack of truthfulness, which is the basic reason. Looking at a crooked tree and say it's perfect, or looking at a perfect tree and saying it's crooked. No, come on, you've got to be honest to yourself. And it's that lack of honesty which is fundamental to stopping spiritual growth, stopping harmony, stopping love, stopping progress in our world. So honesty has to come first. That's why in Buddhism, it should be in all religions, we should raise honesty so high. Let's say, if your friends tell you the truth, they're always forgiven. Always forgiven. Otherwise, if there's a punishment, we drive the truth underground. No one wants to admit what's happened. So honesty is really raised much higher than anything else, almost, in Buddhism. Truthfulness. Gandhi did that. He realized the importance of truth, honesty, more than his reputation, more than even his life. And this is an important thing for us to raise in all spirituality, all religions. Truthfulness is more important than being perfect. You can make mistakes, but admit them. You can be damaged, but admit it. So it's the dishonesty, which is the underlying, if you like, the cancer which eats away at spirituality, at progress, at the sense of being at peace with oneself and others.
Thank you. Ajahn.
Okay. Yes, a question in the back. Who's going to get there first? Whoever gets there first makes the most karma. Good karma. Go on.
Thank you for the speech. You mentioned that we need to lower our expectations.
Yes.
And that kind of made me wonder, where do you draw the line between lowering your expectations but still maintaining your integrity and self-respect? So lowering expectations from your partners or politicians, is there a line, you know?
Yeah. It's usually I say lowering the expectations because most people have far too high expectations of their partner and of themselves and of life. We live in a fantasy world of our partner always being this perfect guy or this perfect woman if you're sort of gay. And it's okay to be gay. You don't have to have the expectations. I have to be straight. I have to be this. I have to be that. Please, be honest to who you are. And lower expectations of what a partner can give you in life. They're going to argue with you. And don't be surprised when they do argue with you and they sort of get really upset at you. It surprised me at first. Yeah, I can see other people get angry at them, but how can it be angry at me? I'm perfect, I'm wonderful, I'm me. You can't get angry at me, I'm always right. But please lower your expectations, allow yourself to be wrong. Allow yourself to make mistakes. First of all, lower your expectations of yourself. It's all right to be sick. Sometimes people are afraid to be sick. They're afraid to go to the doctors. Lower your expectations. It's okay to be sick. If you lower your expectations to real life, don't lower them less than real life. But we expect what life can never give us. Know what life can give us. Know what a partner can give. Know what you can do. And adjust your expectations to meet that level. Sometimes, you see, people go to hospitals and they think they're going to get cured. Many people go into hospitals and they die. So whenever you expect to go into whenever you go to hospital, remember, you expect, this may be the time you die. Expect that. Lower your expectations to meet real life. Life is much more fun that way. Remember Ajahn Charles used to tell me, whenever you go in a hospital, I was really sick once, he came to see me, only once. My great master came to see me and I thought he was going to cheer me up. And he didn't at all. He just came up to me and said, Brahmavamso, you're either going to get better or you're going to die. And then he left. Great bedside manner. Totally truthful. That's what's so irritating with monks like that. You know, they're honest and they're true, but you just don't like to hear it, that's all. I was wanting to hear, how are you feeling today? They're looking after you okay? I talked to the doctors, it looks like you're getting better. No, none of that sort of, no bullshit. It was all about truth, right? So please, whenever you go and see your family member, you know what don't do that. I'll get in big trouble. Some people have told me they've done that. They heard this story, they go to see their old mother in hospital. Mum, you're either going to get better or you're going to die. So, lower your expectations, please. Okay, any other questions before we finish off? Okay, I think it's enough. Okay, let's finish off now. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for listening to the talk. Sadhu. Can I sing? Sadhu, sadhu. Okay, don't have to. I've lowered my expectations a long time ago. So now we can bow 3 times to the Buddha, if you want. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami